Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as a comeback coach. You guys might remember this guy. He's been on the show before. One of my friends, one of my mentors, one of my podcast mentors. He's an amazing dude. He's got a lot going on. He's a business accelerator, podcast host, which I was blessed to be a guest on. He's into the BJJ. So if you don't know about that, we're going to be talking about that. Mostly we're going to be talking about mental health. And if you listen to the end, we're going to tell you how mental health and BJJ can work together for success. So Paul, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Richard. It's great to be back on. I appreciate the invite and you giving me a platform to share this message.
How have you been, brother?
Been great. Just got back from Maryland. I visited my family, met my new niece, and just coming back into the fold, getting back to work.
That's awesome. So let me ask you a question, because if I don't ask this question, because I got a traumatic brain injury, I'll never remember. What is your definition of resiliency?
Love it, man. So for me, resiliency is all about like your ability to overcome obstacles and to push through any sort of resistance that comes in your way. So when I was in the Army, they taught us that resilience was one of the most important characteristics of a soldier. That, it's almost like the epitome of the U.S. Army soldier, that someone who just pushes through every obstacle no matter what. Like that was always what we were taught about growing, when we were in the Army during training, was that just to have that winning mindset, that like the U.S. Army doesn't fail. It just doesn't. Like that's not in the playbook. Like even one of the things that really spoke to me was that even the vocabulary, like the U.S. Army doesn't retreat. We reorganize, or we fall back, or we regroup or something like that. But we never retreat. Like it's just not in the vocabulary. Like if ever someone said retreat, the instructor would be like, nope, we don't retreat. Like it's just not a word we use, for example. So that kind of mindset, like it's never a retreat. It's never a quit. That's in the creed, right? I will never quit. I'll never accept defeat. I mean, it almost like emphasizes it twice in the soldier's creed. I'll never quit. I'll never accept defeat. Like it's basically the same thing, right? So, but they make you say it twice, and in any sort of basic training, or for me, I did the officer training, they make us say that like every day, right? Constantly. You're repeating the soldier's creed. It's like gets drilled into your brain. And for me, that really kind of established what resiliency meant, especially as an entrepreneur. Getting out of the Army in 2020 during COVID was really hard, because I had to start my business when there wasn't a whole lot of money in the economy to go around. So I had to have a lot of resilience. I had to have that never quit mindset, and I had to just not accept defeat and just keep freaking going. And that's really it. It's all about just deciding that like you're going to set your eyes on the mission and you're going to accomplish it.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your military career. Tell us, where you served, how many years you served, and a little bit of background.
So I got in 2014. I entered active duty as a military police officer. I did ROTC in college for 3 years, and I got commissioned as a second lieutenant. And I went over to Germany after doing my officer training time for Lost in the Woods. And they sent me over to Germany for 3 years, which was a really great experience. I got to work in the S3 operations center, and I also got to be a platoon leader. But ultimately what I realized was that the military wasn't for me, and that it was having a really negative impact on my mental health. And I started to actually have panic attacks every day whenever I would start to go into work, because my body was just feeling so shut down. And I started to get mental health, some help for mental health, because I realized that none of my peers or any of my coworkers were having any of the same issues that I was having. Like they just seemed like, we weren't even deployed. Like we were in garrison, so there wasn't a whole lot of stress. It was just the stress of work. Just, it's stressful. Like there's deadlines and stuff to do. And, commanding officers telling you off if you make a mistake, but that's just normal. You know what I'm saying? Like there wasn't anything too crazy going on. So I sought mental health help. And what I realized kind of after going down that rabbit hole is that I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm definitely like more high functioning, but I don't really like that term, because it is such a spectrum. Like I'm high functioning when I'm in the right environment. But if you put me in a wrong environment, like a busy office space, for example, I start to shut down. It's just so, my body's so sensitive to noise. And it's something I never got diagnosed with as a kid because I was homeschooled, and I never was in a very stressful, like loud working environment, if that makes sense. So yeah, basically I made the decision that I was going to try to start up a business, and I was going to try to segue over to working online because I realized that that's really what I needed to do for my mental health. So my whole time in the Army was kind of basically me trying to, do the very best that I could and try to fulfill all my duties and be the best leader that I could, but also starting a business on the side nights and weekends so that I could get out and so that I could do something that I know would be better for my lifestyle, if that makes sense, or what I really needed to do for my mental health. And that's what I did, and I got out in 2020, and I've been working online ever since. And it's way better for my health. Like, I'm so much happier. And yeah, I mean, thank God I never deployed, because I don't think that would have been very good for me or for anyone. But my command team, they were really supportive of me the whole time that I was in, always encouraging me to go to mental health, and they were aware of everything that was going on. So I don't know if they would have ever deployed me if it came down to it, because they knew that I was struggling, and yeah, but I definitely, I'm glad that I got that diagnosis, later in life, and I was able to kind of get that clarity around what to do for the future, where to take my career from here.
All right. So I want to hop on a couple different things because, since we've talked last, um, I never knew about the autism diagnosis because my son is on the spectrum. My son is an Asperger. They have so many different
Yeah.
things. So, but he's high functioning. And so I get it to where, him being around a lot of people is not a good thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to be touchy feely. So, I get it. But, but also he's able to hyper focus on certain things. For him, it's
Right.
animals. He's going to be a marine biologist. He's going through his last year in college. So he can hyper focus, and that's his superpower. So I believe people that are on the spectrum have superpowers. Like for
Yeah.
whatever it is you can hyper focus on, whatever it is. So I can understand how, instead of being in an office setting, you could be in a home setting and you can hyper focus on whatever you have to do. You could take deep dives, 12, 18 hours. It doesn't matter because you hyper focus. Right. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really useful if I'm trying to do something like build a website for a client, or doing something with my podcast where maybe I need to do a lot of editing work, or I need to do something extra, or even just interviewing people. Like, I feel like a lot of times folks who try to start a podcast, they lose steam over time because they're just not that into it. And it is a grind. It's a lot of fun for sure. I've done probably over 500 podcast interviews at this point on my different shows, and it's a lot of fun, but it is a grind. Like, it does drain you energetically. You do need to replenish yourself afterwards and stuff like that. And it's a fun grind, 100%. But you know what I mean? So a lot of people, they don't have that grind, and I think autistic people, they naturally do, if that makes sense. Like, people like us, if you leave your son alone long enough, I guarantee you he's going to be doing something with animals, right? He's probably
Yep.
going to be, and then you walk in and he's probably 14 hours deep into some thought. Like, we're getting my stepson, he's going through the process of trying to get diagnosed because he's always felt like this is him. And he deals with a lot of the same stuff that I do with sensory issues and a lot more. But he's going through that process. But man, like, if he's just constantly working on music, like, he is so into music and he is so into creating beats, and he's actually up on Spotify, got a couple songs up there, and he's really good at making music. And like, if you leave him alone, like, he will come out of that room with a whole album. You know what I mean? Like, and it's wild because most people, they don't have that same level of focus that you're talking about. They don't really have the ability to maybe teach themselves a new skill, for instance, like digital marketing, or podcasting, or making music, or marine biology. He's probably going to be a self-taught marine biologist for the most part. Like people like him probably don't even need to go to school, but for the piece of paper that certifies him, that says, yeah, well, he knows what he's talking about. I guarantee you he'll get in there and know more than the biology professor.
All right. So before we get, I want to dig a little bit deeper into your military transitioning. When because we all know that police officers, firefighters, 11 Bravos, we love to drink coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. Were you a big coffee drinker while you're in the military?
Oh yeah, I'm still a big coffee drinker. Actually, man, my wife just went to the grocery store because we ran out of coffee, and it's like 2:30 here, and I'm freaking like jittering, bro, because I had to have some tea earlier, and it did not cut it, like for real. Oh no, well, I'm a big drinker.
The only reason I bring it up because I was with GNC for 30 years. I was in the military for 23. I love pre-workouts. I loved coffee, but usually they tasted like ass, or I had to go to the bathroom like 5 minutes after I drank them. So I decided to come out with my own coffee, Vertical Momentum coffee. It's twice the energy, twice the caffeine, no crash. But the best part is it's veteran hand roasted, and 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. And the best thing is what we're going to do is we're going to set up FOB Rush to where we're going to be able to take 12 veterans and their families, take care of them for 1 year, physically, mentally, spiritually, at zero cost to the veteran. So guys, if you love coffee with a mission, let me know down below and I'll get you that information. Also, guys, as you guys know, I'm a diabetic and I used to love table sugar, obviously, but I stopped using it. And my friend came out with, he has a company called Buzzy Bees Honey, and he's actually a beekeeper. And I started using it, and instead of using my sugar, I use honey. My blood sugar dropped 180 points just by using honey instead of sugar. And he also makes honey lollipops, which are, oh my God, are amazing. But the best part is like I said, he's actually a beekeeper. So the honey comes from the bee hive right to your house. There is no middleman. So guys, if you love honey, write down below and I'll get you that information. So now let me ask you, because like I said, I think we're both running neck and neck with podcasting. I think I'm over 1,000 interviews, and a lot of veterans, pretty much everybody, they struggle with military transitioning because a lot of us, when we get in, we don't realize that there's a shelf life. No matter you put in a year, 3 years, 6 years, there's a shelf life. And a lot of us don't have a plan. And like my friend Sergeant Nick says, when we step off base, the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing, you don't have a mission, and you don't have a paycheck. And a lot of us end up looking at the bottom of a bottle and a pistol in our mouth. So talk to us about your military transition. Now I knew you knew you were getting out. So how far in did you start planning to get out?
I would say, man, I started planning pretty much as soon. This sounds really bad, but pretty much as soon as I got in, like pretty much, I'd say within a year, I knew that this wasn't for me long term. And I was having a lot of mental health issues. I didn't quite understand the whole autism thing at the time, but I knew that I was having panic attacks, and I knew that I was miserable and that this wasn't what I was supposed to do, really. So I started looking into it then. And I spent probably about a year just researching and just trying to figure stuff out and just trying to see what was the best option. And I listened to a lot of podcasts in that time, like Joe Rogan's podcast, Tim Ferriss podcast, Robert Kiyosaki's podcast. I read his book. I did all of the basics that you hear a lot of people talk about. I read the 4-Hour Work Week, a whole bunch of all that good stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, and sorry, someone's texting me here.
Because you're that important, brother.
No, I'm not. My freaking computer likes to ding whenever someone sends me a message. But anyway, I listened to all the podcasts that you see people listening to, and it helped a lot. And not just that, but I dove into a lot of the guests that they were interviewing. So, if Joe Rogan would have a guest on that I thought was cool, I'd go listen to that person's podcast. And that's how I found like Aubrey Marcus, the CEO of On It, for example, who I really resonated with. And he really changed my thinking about like spirituality and consciousness and entrepreneurship. And I saw like, wow, this is kind of what I want to do. I want to have something where I have a brand like On It, or something like that. And I also have a podcast, and I'm able to do all these other things. And that's really what I kind of decided I wanted to do, was get into podcasting. Because and the way that I kind of landed on podcasting was really just realizing that I didn't really have a lot of skills. I mean, at the time I had studied philosophy in college, and I had been trained as an army officer, and I didn't really have a whole lot of skills, if that makes sense. Like, I knew about blowing things up because the Army taught me about how to shoot and stuff like that. And I knew how to reason and think from philosophy, but I didn't have any real skills. And that was kind of the first step, was me realizing like, holy crap, I don't actually have a whole lot to offer. I didn't really have a whole lot to bring to the table. And, I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to build websites, didn't know how to build an app, didn't know any of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I looked at everything and I was like, well, I know how to talk and I know how to record myself. And I really like podcasts, and they had changed my life. And I thought maybe I could start a podcast. Like, that's really the only thing that I could do at the time, from a tactical perspective. And I just wanted to get started. I was so sick of not taking action after about like basically almost a year and a half of research. And I realized that I needed to start. I was like, man, if I don't start this, whatever it is, it's never going to go anywhere. So I was literally like feeling ill because I hadn't done anything, if that makes sense. Like, it got to that point where I was almost sick with myself, because every single thing that I was reading was saying, you got to take action. You got to take action. You got to take action. And here I was just not doing shit, So I was like, I just got to do something, anything. So I was like, well, I really love Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu is the thing that actually helped me lose a ton of weight to get into the military. Because to get into the military, I had to lose 65 pounds because I was way overweight. And so I started doing jiu-jitsu and judo to lose the weight and be able to get into the military. And then I kept at it while I was still in college, and I ended up really loving it and became like my big thing that I was really into, and I still am. And so I was like, man, I'm so passionate about this jiu-jitsu thing. What if I just start a podcast and I talk to people about jiu-jitsu? And at the time I was living in Europe, and I'd been traveling around and checking out different gyms in Europe. And I was like, man, I'm just going to interview the cool people that I'm meeting and just see where it goes. I'll interview these European jiu-jitsu guys that I'm connecting with and some of my other friends, and off we go. And the first couple episodes I did, I just recorded it on my Android phone, and I posted them on the internet, and it was just me. And they were so bad that I ended up deleting them like a year or two later because they were terrible, and I was embarrassed. And I wish that I kept it up, because I like literally don't have that content anymore. And I would love to go back and hear like the first ones, but I was so embarrassed I literally deleted them from all records because I thought they were so bad. So anyone who's thinking of starting a show, I always tell them like, man, I don't even have my first episodes anymore because I was so embarrassed. But I got started. I published something, and it got better. And then I started interviewing some friends and talking about jiu-jitsu. And my first podcast guests were just people that I was training with, that I just had connected with through jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And the show just kind of took off from there and kept going. And here we are about 7 years later. And I did change the name and the direction of the show, because it used to just be about jiu-jitsu. And now I've taken it more and focused on mental health. And that's what Jiu-Jitsu Outlet is really all about, is all about how jiu-jitsu can help your mental health, and really how it can save the world, and how it can bring about more peace between peoples and between civilizations. And really it's almost just become a evangelical podcast about how everyone needs to start training jiu-jitsu. But I love doing it, man. And I mean, that's kind of a long story short, but
let's talk about it. Podcasting, everybody wants to start one. the average podcast, the last 13 episodes.
Right.
It's called Pod Fade. People are like, wait a minute, this is work? You know, you really have to do work? You mean you want me to actually have to do graphics? You want me to
Yeah.
actually have to edit? You want me to
Right.
actually have to find guests? You want me to actually have to promote it? I'm good. I'm out. So even if I tell everybody, you know, because I teach about podcasting,
Right.
which I learned from obviously from Mr. Zach Babcock. Love you, brother. But I've learned that even if you last 15 episodes, you're in like top 10% world, because a lot of episodes by episode 13, it's over. But a lot of people get caught up in looking number crunching, how many downloads, how much money am I going to make by monetizing, and it can drive you crazy if you don't have an end game in mind. So talk to about, you know, especially if you're analytical like I am. I look at my analytics every day. You know, why one guest is great, has a lot of downloads. Another guest I think is going to have huge downloads, have very little. But it can drive you crazy if you don't have a goal in mind you are trying to reach and why you're having your. So talk a little bit about that, because like I said, a lot of people want to start one, but they don't know why they want to start one. And when things get tough, they quit.
Right. So for me, I'd say a big part of it is, like you said, trying to have a vision for it or trying to have a mission for it, basically, and making the mission something other than, oh, I just want to get wealthy off this thing, because it's going to take a long time for your show to take off and for it to get some momentum going and stuff like that. And it'll go through these different phases. It'll go through different cycles of how popular it is and so on. And the other thing too is you just got to commit. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but you just got to say, like, no matter, kind of like what we were saying before, you've got to have a no quit mindset where you just say, like, no matter how long this takes, even if it takes 10 years, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to publish constantly. And you got to kind of keep in mind this mentality of that, that whenever it does eventually take off, all of that content that you put in is going to reap you enormous rewards. It's basically an investment so long as you keep going, because once you do start to get more traction and you do get more listeners, they're going to go back and binge all of your previous episodes, and they're going to want to have a lot to listen to. And especially these days, a lot of times the algorithms don't even start promoting you until you have a certain amount of content. Now, you can get around that on platforms like YouTube if you have a really good watch time. But what I'm saying is the more videos and the more content you have posted, the better you will eventually do in the algorithms. And the more that you'll actually start to pick up some traction. And then whenever people do find you later on, they're going to be able to go through and binge your whole library. But the other way to think about it is just to not necessarily have your income tied directly to the podcast downloads. And that's really been a great, angle for me, is basically building a massive network of people through the podcast and then figuring out a way to be valuable to that network. So that might look like me working odd jobs for those people. It might look like me building a website for those folks, maybe helping them with some of their content that they're trying to do, or anything like that. So that's really grown into me running a digital marketing agency. And now I have a team of folks that work with me, and we build websites, we do social media content, we make shorts, and we edit videos and so on and so forth. But for me, really diving into building the funnels has been like my big passion there, like learning all about building funnels on Go High Level and these other softwares that are out there where you can start to drive more sales to your business. Like that for me has been basically what I've kind of gone into. So I've started to do more funnel building for people, just because I really like it and a lot of people need it right now. But that's a skill that I developed as a result of me doing the podcast. So the reason that I developed the skill of building funnels and building websites for other people is because I learned how to do that for my podcast, and I learned how to do that for my show. And I was my own first case study, basically. And then it's just kind of built and grown from there. And now I, make a living doing that for other people. So for me, like the bulk of my income comes from the marketing agency, not from the podcast downloads, if that makes sense. So I think that that's super important for people to realize, that you don't need to have a massive audience to make money from your podcast. You can build a giant network and then find a way to be valuable to people in that network. And it might be as simple as them giving you a job. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are so tied to wanting to have themselves as the owner, and they don't want to put aside their ego and go work for someone else. You know, that's fine. You can go work under someone for a couple of years and learn everything from them and build up some money. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be in it alone on day one. You can use your podcast to try to land you a job if that's what you're trying to do. You don't even have to start a business. You know what I'm saying? So,
yep. And, and I believe, you should have, your podcast while you're doing it. For me, as I've evolved in what I'm doing, my focus is on being the best host that I can be. My focus is making sure that the guest is getting all the glory. And something that David Meltzer said to me, and I took it as an affront until I looked it up. He said, "You're more interested than interesting." And then when I looked it up, it said it's the greatest compliment you can give to a host, because they're more worried about what you're saying than what they're saying. So now let me ask you a question, because we're going to talk about business and BJJ. I used to roll a lot when I was younger. I was in the cage for a while, and you had to start out, as a white belt. You had to start out, because if you start rolling and you're brand new and you're rolling with a black belt, and he starts stretching you because you're a wise ass and you're a smart ass and think you know it all, you're going to be in a world of hurt. But right. A lot of times I find that even in business, or even on the mat, if I'm rolling with somebody and we get done, and I'll be like, "Hey, how did you do that? Why did you do that?" And if you're humble in business or on the mat, you're going to get so much further in life or on the mats. So talk about how that correlates, business and BJJ.
I love this question. And this is something we talk about on Jiu-Jitsu Outlet a lot, because you'll find that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are actually really entrepreneurial, or they actually own a business and they've become an entrepreneur. But just about every single person I meet in jiu-jitsu has an entrepreneurial spirit, and they have entrepreneurial ambitions at the very least. But man, I think there's so many correlations. Like, it goes something I think about a lot. And even I was thinking the other day, even about pitching people, like making the pitch in your business. You never want to be too pushy in a sales interaction. You never want to push your sales on people too much. And I realized, man, it's the same sort of thing as you never want to telegraph your shot too much. Like when you're taking a shot in wrestling or in jiu-jitsu, or if you're trying to throw a jab or a right hand in a striking scenario, you never want to telegraph your shot too much. And anyone who's more experienced than you, they're going to see your shot coming a mile away if you're telegraphing it. In the same way, someone who's more experienced than you in business, if you're really pushy in sales, they're going to see you as a novice, because they're going to see, oh, he hasn't figured this out yet. And they're going to see your sales pitch coming from a mile away, and they're going to already know that the answer is no, because they got turned off somehow. You know what I mean? So it's all about being tactful, I guess is what I'm saying. It's about being smooth, I think is a better way to put it. It's all about being smooth. You never want to be, you want to be somewhat elusive, both in jiu-jitsu and in business. You don't want to be wearing your heart on your sleeve necessarily. You want to keep some of your cards to yourself. You don't need to go sharing every single thought that's in your head to the whole world. It's that sort of thing. You want to almost pull back a little bit. And that's something that I've learned with jiu-jitsu, is like to slow down and to pull back and to not overreach. Something our head coach taught us, James Krause, he's a UFC fighter, and he's been in the ring a lot and taught a lot of professional UFC fighters. And he was teaching a seminar that I went to a couple years ago, and he talked for probably about 10 to 15 minutes on the importance of not attacking too much, because you overextend. And he was saying, like, for example, if you get to top half guard, for people who don't know jiu-jitsu, this is where you're on top and you're not fully past their legs, but they have like one of your legs, so you're kind of halfway to a dominant position. And he was saying when you're in that spot, you never want to go crazy and start punching like crazy. He said a lot of times you'll see someone in an MMA fight, they'll get to that position where they're not completely in a dominant position, and they'll try to finish the fight. And they'll try to finish from half guard or from full guard. And he was saying like, no, because if you overextend, you're going to, every time that you attack like that, you overextend and you leave an opportunity for a skilled opponent to take advantage. And it's true. Every single time in martial arts that you try to go for the kill, you leave an opening, and a skilled person can take advantage of that. Because if I'm in, for example, if I'm in mount and I'm trying to set up an arm bar and I actually go to finish it, there's going to be a period where I have to throw my leg over your head, and there's a split second that you can get out. And if you're skilled, you'll be looking for that every time. You'll be like, okay, I'm waiting for him to go for it so I can try to pull my arm down a little bit and get out of this thing. And I was like, man, that really was a big epiphany for me, not just in jiu-jitsu, but in business. I was like, man, it's the same in business. Like if you go too hard in your business, you're going to burn out. If you attack all the time in your business, you're going to eventually crash. It's the same sort of thing I said with sales. Like if you have a contact in your network and you're constantly pitching him, he's going to tell you to screw off. He's eventually going to tell you to no longer contact him, right? Like people don't like to be, that's when you get into you're spamming people,
Mm-hmm.
It's all about holding back. And again, like giving value and, helping people out and still being a part of their network and being a part of their support system. But you don't always have to sell. You know what I mean? If you're always sell, it's the same as if you're always attack in jiu-jitsu. And you're going to leave an opening, and someone who's more experienced than you is going to see that, and they're going to see that, you don't know what you're doing, basically, and they're going to not want to work with you because they get turned off, so it's all about that balance. I think that's really what I'm getting at. Like you got to have balance. And
and that's something that Zach taught me. Zach taught me a lot.
Yeah.
He taught me about how to approach somebody with value, like you're saying. Like if I would have came to you last month and say, hey, Paul, I got the #1 veteran podcast in the world. Why don't you come on? You would probably look at me like, huh? But if I come to you, hey, Paul, brother, I would love to have you come on. I want to talk about your new Airbnb. I want to talk about your podcast. I would love to promote you. Who's going to say no? Nobody says no to when you're willing to promote them, that's why I'm able to have great people on, because I'm always trying to add value. And like you said, just because you have somebody on your show, for me, I want to build generational relationships. So like you were on my first show, I think 3 years ago. We've been friends ever since. And I'll promote your stuff, and I'll tag you on stuff and whatever you got going on, because I believe relationships are everything, especially in business. So talk about building relationships after the episode or after the sale.
I love this question, man. And I think it's super important to just keep the value going and to keep looking for little ways to help people out. And I really love connecting people. That's one of my favorite ways to add value to people in my network, is just connecting people around. And you're really great at that, man. Like, honestly, you're a really good person that I have been able to connect others with because of this platform. And I'm always trying to look out for like, okay, who can I send Richard? Like if ever I have someone in my network who's a veteran entrepreneur, real estate guy, like Dave Perret, for example, I'm like, man, you got to go talk to Richard, get on his show. And that helps out both people without me really having to do much at all. I just make the connection, and all I have to do is just think to myself, oh, it would be cool if Dave met Richard, and then I just connect you two. And of course I check with both people to make sure that they want to be connected and that they have time for that. But most people do. Most people are like, sure, I'll meet a new friend. Sounds great. And that's a really great way to add value, is if you have, you can almost be like a matchmaker. And you don't want to do it like too much, if that makes sense. Because again, you don't want to spam people. Like if you're trying to do this for someone every single week, eventually they might be like, oh man, Like, what do you want from me? Like, you don't want it to ever come off like you're doing this because you are trying to extort favors, I guess is what I'm saying. We're not extorting favors. I'm just legitimately just thinking about it. You know, I'm like, who can it comes into my head often, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm like, oh, I should just do this. And then I just go do it, you know. But if you have that kind of like, wait for that flash of intuition, if that makes sense, that really says like, oh, you know who would be a really good connection for this guy? My friend Andrew or whoever, you know what I mean? And if you can do that, you can really help both people in your network. And again, you don't really have to do much at all. It doesn't take much work. So that's a really good way to do it. Is basically like, you know, if you've interviewed them on your podcast, hook them up with 3 or 4 more friends who have podcasts, you know, and helps out everyone. And, you know, if something you can do, again, it takes you 10 seconds to open up a chat thread on Facebook Messenger and connect some people together.
I do it all the time because I'll be like, all right, so Frank needs a mechanic. My brother Joe is a mechanic and he's great. So why don't I just hook him up? And then I leave the chat because I don't need to be there. Whether they talk and have friends, whatever. I'm just trying to solve 2 problems.
Yeah.
And if it works out, I come out smelling like roses. And the worst case scenario, I help 2 people out. That is the worst case scenario, that I introduce 2 people. And I think if we start thinking more like that, to trying to create value and, you know, adding value, I think will be a lot better, especially in podcasting. Like for me, I've noticed podcasts that have a million downloads, and they got 4 reviews. And you know, like we were taught, you know, ask for the review, whether it was I'm going to ask you for the review when we get done. But I'm also going to tell you, if it's a 1-star interview, leave a 1-star review. You know, if it's a good interview, leave a good review. But a lot of podcasters don't ask for reviews, and then they're wondering why they're not getting kicked up into the algorithms of the most watched shows. Because, well, if I'm going to want to take my wife to the movies and it's got 2 reviews, we're probably not going. So talk a little bit about that, especially with podcasts and businesses, about reviews on social media and Google.
Well, that's a great question. And man, I mean, I feel like you said it right there. Like you really gotta ask for it, you know, and you gotta put it into your sequences. Like something that I noticed with you, man, is you put it in all your email sequences that go out that remind people, like, you know, and the ones that went out for me, for example, for this show, like, you know, you're already, you have it multiple times. And that's something that you learn if you study marketing. People usually need to hear about something at least 7 times before they're ready to take action. So you just got to keep it coming. You know, you got to keep it pumping. And something that works well too is just if you can express to your audience how much it actually helps. Because most people just don't know. They don't understand that if they leave you a review, it's actually helping a lot. That's really one of the key metrics for the podcast, if not the key metric, honestly. Like reviews honestly might even be more important than downloads in terms of what the algorithm is looking at, if that makes sense. They want to know, do people actually love this show? And stuff like that. Does it create raving fans is really what they're looking at. So, and I mean, I think that softwares like Go High Level do a really good job of this for Google My Business. Like there's softwares like Go High Level where you can set it up to automate people leaving reviews on your Google page, you know, on the Google My Business page, basically. And that's super important, especially if you're a service-based business. This is something one of my clients, Jake Ingledew, is really big on, because he's got a pest control business, and he says that really their whole pest control business boils down to the Google My Business page and ads they're running on Google. He's like, that really is it. Like if you can get a Google My Business page that has 100 reviews on it and they're all really good, you're going to show up for the top spot in your city. You know, if people are Googling for pest control or whatever it is, you're going to show up because you're the most reviewed business. So super important for service-based businesses to take advantage of the Google My Business stuff and trying to automate that using a software. And you can also incentivize people to do reviews. Like that's huge. I've seen a lot of folks do that these days, where they'll give you a 5% off coupon or a 10% off coupon if you can show a screenshot of the review. Like there's a lot of businesses, for example, a coffee shop could use that really easily. Be like, hey, if you can show us that you left a review on the Google page, it's 5% off. If you can show another review on the Facebook page, that's another 5% off. You know, so you can kind of do that way. Works really well. I mean, you literally are basically buying reviews, but I mean, that can work really well because you're also incentivizing them to buy more from you, because once people have a coupon, they might buy more. So kind of take advantage of that too. But
Sure. All right. So, like I said, we'll continue talking about business because, like I said, even with podcasting, the average episode, 13 episodes, it's called pod fade. You know, a lot of people just give up. And even in martial arts, you know, like I was in martial arts for a long time and I would see it. You get these young kids, they start getting that first, second belt. You know, now you're going between second, third, and fourth belt. It might take you 2 years to get to the next belt. And if you think, you know, all right, well, hey, I'm 8 years old and I got my second belt. By the time I'm 10, I should be a black belt. That's not the way it works in business or martial arts. You got to pay your dues. So talk a little bit about that, about paying your dues and putting that 10,000 hours to perfecting your craft.
Yep. I love it, man. And I think that's everything, both with business, with podcasting, martial arts, fitness of any kind. Like what you're talking about is the essence of the thing. And you gotta reframe success in your mind. I think that I love this quote from Alex Hormozy, where I think it was on the Andy Frisella podcast, but he was saying, like, in business, you don't ever win business. The goal is to stay in business. You know, or like in marriage, you never win marriage. The goal is to stay married. It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You never win jiu-jitsu. The goal is to keep training. The goal is to keep showing up and to not get injured and to not get to a point where you have to quit or something like that. You know, and if you do get injured, you got to go back. You know, once you're healed, you got to figure it out. And that's the goal, is to just keep training. The same thing with your podcast. The goal isn't to win podcasting, because that's impossible. The goal is to keep podcasting for the rest of your life and you know, have a big show basically, and just to have the show. And this even goes into the Bhagavad Gita. If we're getting into the spiritual text, the Bhagavad Gita is one of the most sacred texts in Hinduism. And in it talks about how we don't have any sort of right to the outcomes of our work. We only have a right to the work itself. And that basically anything that comes out of the work is just extra. It's a great reward, or it's not even a reward. It's just a thing that came of it, basically. But you're not entitled to it, you know. And we see this all the time. Like this beautiful house that I live in. We live on 5 acres next to a river in the middle of nowhere. I absolutely love it. But this place came to us just through magic, honestly. Like, kind of fell into our laps because the timing was right and everything worked out. And I wake up every day just feeling really grateful, but I never feel like I deserve this place, you know, because it's land. You know what I'm saying? It's earth. Like we don't own the earth. We just get to rent it for a little while, you know? So it's kind of that same mindset. Like even the things that you will one day own, like your big coffee company, like if your coffee company grows to become the biggest coffee company in the entire world, that will be an outcome of many people working together, you know, because you'll need a team. And like the same with me with Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. Like once Jiu-Jitsu Outlet is in every single city, we've got stores in every city, which is the goal. That will be beyond me. You know, I'll have maybe started it, but you know, it'll be the work of hundreds of people at that point, you know, and we'll all have a share in it. And really what we get from all of this is just, we get to be a part of the process. And that's why I think it's so important to do what you love. And ultimately, that's why I had to get out of the military, because I realized this, like I wasn't loving what I do. And at the end of the day, that's all you get. Like what the work is it. We're not like, this is it. Like if you don't enjoy the podcast, if you don't enjoy the interview, if you don't enjoy creating content, then stop doing it. Because, you know, that is the reward. The end is the reward. Like if you're trying to be a famous musician, playing the music every day is the reward. Like me doing jiu-jitsu every day, that's the reward. Like I'm not necessarily training for anything. You know what I'm saying? Like training is the reward in of itself.
But, you know, also because since I've started doing this, I've become a watcher, a lurker, spectator. I watch what everybody does. I try to learn from everybody because I feel even 1,000 episodes in, I'm still a rookie. But now you see everybody doing the Alex Hormozy thing. Everybody trying to do, what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And they're not doing like Gary talks about, my friend Gary Vaynerchuk. He talks about, enjoying the process, but also learning while you're doing it. Like when I first started the podcast, it was audio only on Anchor. I didn't have this studio. I didn't have this, and I didn't have AI. I didn't have Chat GPT. But as I see podcasters starting to come aboard now, it's something you can use AI as a tool, not a crutch, but as a tool. So talk about using AI in today's world of business and podcasting.
So this is something we talk about on one of my other podcasts, Beyond Homo Sapien, quite a bit, all about artificial intelligence, the evolution of humanity, and where this is all going. And there's so many opportunities right now to use these tools, but you got to be really careful that you're using the right ones, if that makes sense. And you also got to be really careful that you're fact checking stuff, because everything that ChatGPT says is not true.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like quite the opposite, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I've told people, it's really good at taking something that you made and reproducing it and turning it into more. But it's really, really bad at making stuff from scratch. That's the thing with the AI. So if you ask ChatGPT to write a book, it can do it, but it's not going to be a very good book. I mean, I've asked, and it's okay. Like people are all like, "Oh man, it can write a book." Like, yeah, I can write a okay book that will probably never go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to create a masterpiece, you need to put your own work into that. And then once you have something, then you can take that to ChatGPT and you can have it extrapolate it and you can have it use your wording, if that makes sense. But I don't like to just take it from scratch, so to speak, because it's not the best. It's not the best. There are other tools though, like Koala is one that has a really good blog writing tool. So there are other tools out there that kind of integrate with ChatGPT or they're built on top of it. Like Koala is one that I really like. They've got a fantastic blog writing tool that actually is really freaking good. It's way better than ChatGPT, and the stuff that it writes is top notch. But even that stuff, you're going to want to fact check it. You're going to want to read through it and make sure that it's good. And you're going to probably want to put your own spin on it, especially if you're a subject matter expert. So that's really what I've been trying to tell people to do is like, we got to work with the AI and partner with it, but not trust it to do everything. Because if we trust it to do everything, it's going to create a lot of subpar stuff and it's not going to be that good. But if you partner with it and if you work with it and you're able to use it as a tool to basically 10x what you're already doing, then it's completely different. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I just found a new tool actually that I just tried. It's called Opus Clip. I'll send this to you when I'm done. This is one that I've been playing with today. Opus Clip. My friend Cody Neer sent it to me. But I'll send this to you when I'm done. But I literally just found out about this today. And it's amazing. You give it a YouTube video and it splices it up into different clips and it adds the cool little captions on it. And bro, this thing, I gave it a vlog that was like 6 minutes to try to see if it could pick out the most important parts of the vlog. Because in a vlog, like most of the content isn't critical, if that makes sense, because it's kind of like a behind the scenes sort of thing. So I was like, all right, this will be a good test. Let's see if it can pick the right spots, the highlights. And it did better than I could do, honestly. Like it was perfect. And it perfectly analyzed like the highlights of the vlog to make it so that you could watch that 1 minute clip and you would get the gist of it of a 6 minute video. And it was perfect. And it did the captions and everything. And it took like 45 seconds to do.
It's pretty amazing. I have a lot of people ask me, well, isn't that cheating? And I'm like, when you go to your lawyer and you get the piece of paper that you have to sign, do you think he sat down and wrote it up? No, he had his assistant do it. When you go to a doctor, there's a physician's assistant. Same thing with, AI. It's there to assist you as a partnership, not doing the work, but to help you. And for the people that are worried about losing their jobs, as far as, you know, AI goes, that means you weren't doing a good job to begin with. Because even if I'm a construction worker and you give me a shovel and I don't know what to do with that shovel, it doesn't matter how good the shovel is. Same thing with Chat GPT, Baird, any of these. It's your inputs that are more important because, like I said, if you don't know how to use a tool, it doesn't matter anyway, correct?
Yep, 100%. And it's a supplement, I think. And going back to what you said about, you know, people think it's cheating or something like that. It's the computer versus the typewriter. It's the same sort of thing. It's just the evolution of technology, and people got to adapt. And to all those who are saying, oh, you shouldn't use it because not everything on there is true. Well, that's the whole freaking internet, my friends. That is day one of the internet. People have been forgotten the golden rule of the internet, which is not everything you see on the internet is true. In fact, a good deal of it is not. And you always want to fact check everything that you find online. You always want to put it against your own experience and your own expertise and your own intuition, your own logic, your own reasoning. You know, like this is my dad, when I was like 7 years old, is when I remember getting our first computer that had internet access. I think I was like, I might have been a little bit older, but I think I was like 7 or 8. And I remember my dad showed me before he powered it on, he powered it up and he showed me like how it worked. And he gave me a little brief on like, oh, what a computer is. And he was like, listen, it's connected to this thing called the internet. If you get on the internet, you need to be really careful because not most of the stuff that you see on the internet is completely made up. It's just not even real. You're going to read some crazy things and you just need to ignore most of it. And I was like, okay, Dad, cool. And like, I've kept that mentality the entire time. Like literally that was the first brief that I got going into this thing. And maybe a lot of people's dads like forgot to tell them that information, but yeah, most of the stuff you see on the internet is not real. So Chat GPT is.
Wait a minute. Why are you calling out the Liver King like that, bro? Why are you calling? All right. So let me ask you, that's a whole different podcast. But tell us about your house. Because I find, you know, like you were talking about earlier, like when I started my podcasting, now I have a clothing company. Now I have the coffee company. Now I have sponsors. Now I'm doing this and doing that. I'm brand, but still using the podcast. So talk about your house behind you. Show me that again. I need to see it. I think it's the coolest thing ever.
So this isn't where I sleep because we have a little cabin that's like over there. But I've been doing a lot of the podcast recordings here in our new tiny house because the internet is way better. So yeah, we just put this tiny house up on Airbnb. Got the full bed right there. Right here, we got a little kitchen area. And then up there, we got a little loft with the other sleeping areas. And whoops, you can't really see that. But yeah, we live on 5 acres next to a river in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. And yeah, so far the reviews have been pretty phenomenal because our whole intention with doing this was obviously create more cash flow on the property so we can cover the mortgage and stuff, but also because we want to provide a really great place for people to come and have some alone time or some family time or come and enjoy nature because we live in the heart of the Ozarks and the river is like right down the hill in my backyard. And it's amazing. So far, everyone seemed to have a really good time just disconnecting from nature or from the city rather, and making a little fire outside. But yeah, it's great, man. I love it.
All right. So last question. Well, actually, I got 2 questions just because it's you. How do we find you? How do we support your mission? How do we follow you?
I'd say the best thing anyone can do is go subscribe to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app like Spotify or Apple. And the whole point of the show is interviewing people to hear about how jiu-jitsu training has helped their mental health and basically talk about how we think it can help mankind and how it can help people to heal from their mental health and to also heal their physical health, whether it's losing weight or conquering some sort of disease or some sort of thing that they're trying to struggle with. And yeah, go check it out.
Okay. And like I said, I was a guest on your one podcast and I love it. I don't miss an episode. So whenever your episode comes out, I'm the first one to listen to it. So if your numbers have gone up, I'm taking full responsibility if your numbers have gone up. And guys, make sure you go to his podcast and leave reviews. I always leave 6-star reviews because anybody can leave a 5-star. I leave a 6-star. So make sure that you go out and listen to his podcast, subscribe, and also leave a review because that's the ultimate form of of respect. And like Gary Vee said, it's free. It's free. So just go out and do it. My last question is: we live in a crazy world. We live in a very busy world. So the average person, if I ask him to do something in 7 days, they're never going to get to it. But if I ask them to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely. So if there's somebody out there right now struggling with their mental health, what can they do in the next 24 hours to get help?
Well, what I've told a lot of folks is if it's something that's severe, like you are having suicidal thoughts or something like that, definitely seek help. There's actually a suicide prevention line that you can call. And I would say definitely get that help. But if you're someone who is maybe dealing with anxiety, depression, if you're on the autism spectrum like me, then I recommend you check out a martial arts academy and get involved with grappling, get involved with jiu-jitsu, submission wrestling, Muay Thai, judo, boxing, any of these martial arts that are legit and have a combat element. And the reason being, you might say at first like, oh, but I lift weights. Isn't that the same sort of thing? Well, it does trigger a lot of the same sort of benefits in your body, but there's all these other benefits that come from jiu-jitsu that trigger different things in your brain. It actually produces more dopamine in your brain when you learn the different techniques and you're able to apply them successfully to another person. It can give you a massive spike in serotonin as well. So it's literally like I interviewed one of my friends, Musin Corbry, on this topic, and he's someone who's studying the cutting edge of neuroscience at the University of Arizona. He's finishing up his PhD, and he's also a pro MMA fighter, a jiu-jitsu black belt, and a judo black belt. Like, this is the most qualified guy I could find on this subject. And I'm actually getting him back to talk about this next week. But what they're finding is that jiu-jitsu and exercise like it, that it produces all of these different stimulus in your body. I interviewed someone named Sterling Cooley, who's an expert in the vagus nerve, and he talked all about how jiu-jitsu training actually stimulates the vagus nerve system in your body, which connects all of your organs together. So literally by stimulating this, it helps your body to release toxins, to improve overall health, and to really like dramatically increase weight loss. All of these different things are connected with optimal vagus nerve health. So by training jiu-jitsu, you're literally giving your nervous system and your brain all of these different chemicals that it's missing. It's giving it all these different stimulus that it's not getting. It also produces oxytocin in your body whenever you are touching other people. So just by grappling with others and by getting in that physical contact or even just drilling, you produce oxytocin, which is super healthy. And it's something that most people are deficient in because most people aren't getting touched enough. They don't have any sort of physical touch. And usually most of the touch that people get is sexual. And it's really healthy for us to have non-sexual contact as humans. And it's good to have the skin on skin contact. And there's just all these other benefits that come from it. So you can listen to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. You can hear about everyone's stories. But I mean, it's really the same story. People say they get increased confidence like crazy. They lose weight. Their depression goes away. Their anxiety starts to go away. I mean, obviously this is all anecdotal, but it seems pretty clear that if you train jiu-jitsu for, at least maybe 6 months to a year, you're going to start to see these different benefits. You're going to be walking around with more confidence than you've ever had in your entire life.
And I love that. And like I tell everybody, if you're in the gym and you're just hitting a heavy bag, you're playing checkers.
Yeah.
Once you start rolling, you're playing chess.
Yeah.
It's a whole different game. You know what I mean? So, brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm so grateful. We've been friends, I think, going on 5 or 6 years. And I just want to say, brother, I'm so grateful for everything you got going on. And I just love you and your family. I just want to say thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it, man.
Hi, guys. So remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. And guys, you know I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, so I always end with this. Guys, it's your choice to be the victim or the victor. And today I decide I'm going to be a victor. Make sure you make that same decision today. Brother, have an amazing week.
You too, man. Thank you.